Look at this. You hold up the stone. It's heavy, solid, and entirely unremarkable. Yet, in your mind right now, you've assigned it a dozen potential meanings. Is it a metaphor? Is it a key? Is it just a rock? That simple act, of searching for a hidden meaning, is proof of a deep, ancient human truth: we are creatures of the secret. We build our lives, our relationships, and our very identities in layers of concealed information. Now, imagine a secret, a confidence, a vulnerability, a piece of truth entrusted to you. When you hold it, it feels like power, like a sacred contract. But what happens when that contract is broken? What is the real cost when we take something private and cast it into the public square? This isn't just about gossip. This is about the personal flaw, the profound defect, of unveiling secrets. It is the psychological compulsion, the philosophical betrayal, and the quiet, structural damage it does to the very foundation of trust in the modern world. And today, we're asking the hardest question: when you reveal someone else's secret, who is the person you are truly betraying? Stay with us, perhaps the facts in this video may change your life forever. The Flaw of Unveiling Secrets, the Architecture of Trust and Betrayal. Philosophical Deep Dive, the Architecture of Trust. To understand the flaw, we must first understand the function of the secret. Philosophically, a secret is the currency of intimacy. It's not just a piece of data, it's a gift of vulnerability. When someone shares a secret, they are essentially saying, "I trust your character more than I fear the consequences of this truth." The Kantian critique, the universal law of silence. The most rigorous ethical lens we can apply is that of Immanuel Kant and his categorical imperative. Kant insists that a moral action is one that could be universalized without contradiction. We asked earlier, could the act of revealing secrets be a universal law? The answer is a resounding no. If every private confidence were immediately released, the very concept of a private life would cease to exist. Trust, as a necessary precondition for complex human society, would be logically annihilated. The betrayer, therefore, is not just breaking a personal promise, they are acting on a maxim, a rule of conduct, that, if adopted by all, would make rational interaction impossible. The act is not only immoral, it is rationally self-defeating. It undermines the very framework that makes the relationship, and the sharing of the secret, possible in the first place. The weight we carry, the secret is a cage and a sanctuary. The camera slowly pulls back to reveal you, sitting quietly, eyes closed for a moment, then opening them slowly to look into the lens. The lighting is soft, emphasizing introspection. Now, I want you to close your eyes, just for a moment, and picture the heaviest object you carry. Is it a regret? An ambition that failed? Or is it simply a truth, a secret entrusted to you, a quiet knowledge that belongs entirely to someone else? When a secret is shared, it creates an invisible, unwritten treaty. For the one who confides, the secret is a sanctuary, a small, protected space where vulnerability can breathe. For the one who receives it, the secret is a weight, a heavy, silent promise, a badge of immense trust. We spend our lives wrestling with this weight. We all feel the pressure, the subtle, magnetic force that compels us to unburden ourselves, to pass the knowledge along, to lighten our own load by making it public. But what if that compulsion, that irresistible urge to unveil, is not just a moment of weakness, but a fundamental philosophical error? What if the act of revealing a confidence says less about the information itself, and far more about the deficiency in the soul of the person who speaks it? Today, we are not interested in the drama of betrayal, we are interested in the contemplative ethics of silence. We are going to explore the profound personal fault of unveiling secrets by asking, when does the burden of shared knowledge transform from a sacred responsibility into a corrosive poison? And what does our inability to maintain silence reveal about our own integrity, our own need for attention, and our own understanding of true, reciprocal trust? This is a deep dive into character, the architecture of what makes us worthy of another human being's truth. If you've ever wrestled with an urge to tell, or if you've ever been wounded by a confidence broken, this reflection is for you. Let's begin. The virtue ethics perspective, the defect of character. Now, let's consider Aristotle and virtue ethics. This perspective asks not, what should I do? But, what kind of person should I be? The secret revealer demonstrates a profound deficiency in core virtues. 1. Lack of prudence. The virtue of practical wisdom. A prudent person weighs the consequences of their actions. Revealing a secret rarely has a net positive outcome for anyone involved. It is an act of short-sightedness, valuing immediate relief or attention over long-term relational health. 2. Lack of loyalty, friendship. Friendship, for Aristotle, requires mutual goodwill and shared life. Sharing a secret is an attack on the shared life. It shows the individual prioritize their own temporary emotional state over the fundamental well-being of the friend. It is an active destruction of philia. 3. The vice of self-exposure, incontinence. The compulsion to speak, to vent, or to shock often stems from a lack of self-control, or incontinence. The secret becomes too heavy for the individual to carry, not because they must speak to protect the innocent, but because they are unable to govern their own tongue. This is not strength, it is a moral weakness. The philosophical fault of unveiling secrets, therefore, is not merely that it harms another person, but that it constitutes a fundamental betrayal of rational morality and a failure to cultivate essential human virtues. Psychological insights, the compulsion and the cost. Philosophy gives us the ethical map, psychology gives us the motivation. Why do we risk everything, trust, reputation, relationships, to spill the beans? The drivers are often rooted in deep-seated, painful human needs. The dynamics of power and attention. The core psychological drive is often a pursuit of social capital. In the moment of revealing a secret, the leaker temporarily elevates their own status. They become the gatekeeper of privileged information. They are suddenly interesting, important, or even dangerous. This is a powerful hit of dopamine, a fleeting sense of control over a narrative. For someone who feels powerless in their career or personal life, this brief moment of informational superiority can be intoxicating. The secret holder believes, I am indispensable because I know what you do not. Emotional regulation and projective relief. Another common driver is the failure of emotional regulation. When someone confides a deeply troubling secret, the listener often internalizes some of that stress and anxiety. The secret becomes a burden. The act of revealing it is a form of projective relief. By pushing the secret out into the world, the individual is trying to push the stress out of themselves. They want someone else to share the burden of the knowledge. This is a fundamentally selfish act. They prioritize their own momentary relief over the long-term well-being of the confider. The psychology of weaponization and revenge. Finally, there is the darker side, secrets as weapons. In cases of resentment, conflict, or revenge, previously entrusted knowledge is repurposed as a guided missile aimed at maximum pain. Psychologists note that this is a classic manifestation of narcissistic injury. If the relationship ends or the betrayer feels wronged, they seek to restore their own damaged ego by damaging the reputation and security of the other person. They are saying, I may have lost the relationship, but I will not lose the narrative. This is the ultimate act of weaponizing intimacy. The psychological cost to the betrayer is also significant. They often suffer from 1. Cognitive dissonance, the internal conflict between the self-image of a good friend/person and the reality of their destructive act. This often leads to rationalization, they deserved it, or it was for their own good. 2. Erosion of future intimacy. The betrayer has signaled to the world, and subconsciously to themselves, that they are an unsafe harbor. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where future relationships are superficial, as genuine intimacy is withheld. They have made themselves fundamentally alone. 3 Modern manifestations of the flaw. The philosophical flaw and the psychological defect play out in hyper-speed in our digital age. We will show you 3 different examples. Example 1, the AI/data dump and the breach of pseudosymmetry. The scenario, we are no longer trusting just friends, we are trusting platforms and AI. People confide deeply personal information, health issues, financial worries, political anxieties, into private chats, journals, and even nascent AI therapeutic apps, believing they are talking to a safe, private entity. The betrayal, a company, either through malice or incompetence, suffers a massive data breach. Or, the internal policy of an AI model is updated, and engineers, or the public, gain access to previously private user prompts. The fault, this is the collective, systemic version of the flaw. The secret is unveiled not by a whispered word, but by a line of code. The betrayal here is committed by institutions that fail to recognize that a data point is not just data, it is often a digital representation of a vulnerable secret. The failure to encrypt, the decision to sell, or the lack of proper protocols is an institutional lack of prudence that mirrors the individual flaw. The damage is a deep chilling effect on freedom of speech and the ability to seek help privately. Example no. 2. the toxic subreddit/Discord and the performative exposure. The scenario, a secret, perhaps something mildly embarrassing or a failure, is shared in a semi-private online community, a small Discord server, a closed Facebook group, or a specialized subreddit. The original context was one of support or dark humor. The betrayal, a member of that community takes the information and posts it on a much larger, more critical platform, like a shaming subreddit or a major news aggregator, to garner upvotes, performative outrage, or internet clout. They often frame it as look how crazy/stupid this person is. The fault, this is the psychological drive for attention and validation in its purest, most destructive form. The secret is weaponized for digital spectacle. The betrayer uses the emotional shock value of another person's vulnerability to fuel their own fleeting popularity. It's the modern version of standing on a soapbox and pointing, a deeply cynical economy built on trading human dignity for likes. Example number 3, the influencer's vulnerability and the transactional secret. There was a social media influencer or micro-celebrity decides to share a deep, dark secret about a past relationship, a family member, or a personal struggle. They carefully choreograph the lighting, the tears, and the emotional climax in a 15-minute video. The betrayal, the problem isn't the vulnerability itself, but that the secret is often not theirs alone to reveal, it involves a third party who did not consent, and its core purpose is transactional. The secret is unveiled not for genuine therapeutic healing, but to drive engagement, monetize trauma, and create a narrative arc that justifies a sponsorship deal or a jump in follower count. The fault, this is the commercialization of the secret. It teaches a dangerous lesson, that private truth is not a sacred gift, but an asset to be liquidated for personal gain. It blurs the line between genuine emotional disclosure and manipulative content, leaving the audience and, more importantly, the person whose secret was shared, feeling cheapened and used. The path to prudence, guarding the gate. We cannot control what others tell us, but we can control our response. If the unveiling of secrets is a character flaw, the guarding of secrets is a core virtue. It is the practice of prudence in action. How do we cultivate this virtue, especially in a world that constantly demands we share, disclose, and over-communicate? 1. The sovereignty test. Before you speak, ask yourself, does the sovereignty over this information belong to me? If the answer is no, then silence is the default moral position. Your feelings about the information, your boredom, or your desire for attention do not override the other person's right to control their own story. 2. The consequence projection. Think 3 steps ahead. The initial relief of venting is step 1. What is step 2? The rumor starting. What is step 3? The person whose secret was told finding out. Most breaches of confidence occur because the person stops thinking after step 1. 3. The boundary of authority. When you feel the overwhelming urge to share a burdensome secret, recognize that you are dealing with a problem of authority. You want to resolve the secret's tension, but you lack the authority to do so ethically. The proper response is to seek counsel about the burden of the secret, not to expose the secret itself. Speak to a therapist or a trusted, neutral party for guidance on handling the knowledge, not for permission to spill it. This practice, the discipline of the tongue, is a profound act of self-mastery. It is the difference between being a slave to impulse and being the master of your own moral character. The secret is the silent architect of human connection. When we choose to keep a confidence, we are doing more than just being a loyal friend. We are building something essential. We are affirming the value of the individual's right to self-determination. We are affirming that empathy is a commitment, not just a feeling. And we are affirming that trust is a structure that is built brick by brick, not a given right. So, I leave you with this promise: the hardest thing in this noisy, transparent, hyper-connected world is to hold a valuable thing in silence. But the man or woman who can carry the burden of an entrusted truth, who can withstand the temptation of the reveal, is the person who will be the most trusted, the most respected, and ultimately, the most free. The defect of unveiling secrets is the act of making yourself smaller. The virtue of guarding them is how you make your character stronger. The path to prudence, the discipline of the tongue visual, you move from the desk, picking up the river stone again, holding it between your thumb and forefinger. The music is reflective, quiet. We have explored the philosophical error of unveiling secrets, the betrayal of rational morality, the Kantian failure to universalize the act. We've dissected the psychological compulsion, the craving for validation, the shallow search for relief from the burden of knowledge. And we've seen its sharp, modern consequences, from the transactional secrecy of the influencer economy to the systemic failures of data trust. The flaw, at its heart, is one of self-mastery. The world doesn't need more noise, it doesn't need more information. What the world truly craves is safe harbor. If the unveiling of secrets is a character flaw, the guarding of secrets, the discipline of the tongue, is a core and necessary virtue. How do we cultivate this virtue? How do we become the kind of person who is worthy of the truth? 1. Embrace the sovereignty. Test: before a word leaves your mouth, ask yourself, does the sovereignty over this information belong to me? If the answer is unequivocally no, then silence is not merely an option, it is the moral imperative. Your personal boredom, your desire for attention, or your discomfort with the knowledge never overrides another person's fundamental right to control their own narrative. 2. The projection of consequences. The sin of revealing secrets is almost always a failure of imagination. Think 3 steps ahead. Step 1 is the momentary relief of venting. Step 2 is the rapid spread of the rumor and the immediate damage to the victim's reputation. Step 3, the most neglected, is the destruction of your own trustworthiness, the moment you signal to the entire world that you are an unsafe place to be found. Prudence demands we project these negative consequences onto ourselves before we act. 3. Handle the burden ethically. If the knowledge is truly a burden, if it involves potential harm or genuine moral ambiguity, you do not have the authority to unilaterally release the secret. You have the authority to seek counsel. Talk to a therapist, a religious advisor, or a neutral, third-party professional about the stress of holding the knowledge, not to disclose the secret itself. This allows you to manage the psychological weight without committing the ethical transgression. The discipline required to maintain silence is not a sign of fear or compliance, it is a profound act of self-control. It is the difference between being a slave to impulse and being the master of your own moral character. The promise of the architect. The secret is the silent architect of all complex human connection. When we choose to keep a confidence, we are doing more than just being a loyal friend, we are engaging in a radical act of societal creation. We are affirming the value of the individual's right to self-determination. We are affirming that empathy is a commitment, not just a fleeting feeling. And we are affirming that trust is a structure that is built brick by brick, not a given right. To unveil secrets is to confess a moral weakness, it is to prioritize your temporary, internal needs over the sacred, external truth. It is the act of making yourself smaller. But the man or woman who can carry the burden of an entrusted truth, who can withstand the temptation of the reveal, who can build a reputation not on what they know and tell, but on what they know and quietly protect, is the person who will be the most trusted, the most respected, and ultimately, the most free. They are the silent architects of trust itself. What is the greatest betrayal you've ever witnessed? Share your thoughts, maintaining discretion and respect, in the comments below. Like, subscribe to Edulosophy, and never take the gift of trust for granted. See you next time.